All right, welcome back. Today, we're going to dig into a timeless fable that has a lesson that honestly cuts right to the heart of what it means to be good at what you do. It's a story about the bees, the wasps, and something we're calling the work test. And it all starts with a really simple but powerful question. And yeah, this is really the whole point of our story. What is the actual difference between just looking like you know what you're doing and actually doing the work? It's about being real, being competent, and what truly makes us valuable. So let's jump in and see how this all shakes out in a pretty classic tale. So, our story kicks off with a classic problem, a big disagreement. We're basically dropping right into an old school court case, and it's all about a hidden treasure, two groups who both say it's theirs, and a judge who has to make a tough call. Okay, so picture this. Somebody finds a huge stash of honey inside a hollow tree. Right away, the bees show up, and they're like, yep, that's ours. We worked hard for that. But then, boom, the wasps buzz in, and they're making the exact same claim, just as loud and just as confident. So, as you can imagine, things get pretty heated. It looks like it's going to turn into a full-on brawl. But, cooler heads prevail, and they decide to handle this the civilized way. They take their case to the local judge, who happens to be a wise old hornet. All right, so now we're in the courtroom, and this is where things get, well, complicated. Because, at first glance, these two groups look almost identical, which makes it super hard to figure out who's telling the truth. So, they call the first witnesses to the stand, and they say, yeah, we saw some creatures hanging around that tree. They had wings, they were humming, and here's the kicker. They were striped yellow and black. Sounds like an open and shut case, right? Well, not exactly. And this, right here, is the judge's big headache. That description, it fits the bees to a T, but it also fits the wasps perfectly. So the evidence is totally useless. It's all just based on how they look, on their stripes. So the judge is completely stumped. He's got nothing to go on but looks. And he does what any good bureaucracy does when it's stuck. He stalls. He adjourns the court for six whole weeks. And all that time, the honey is just sitting there, probably going bad, while everyone just waits. Okay, so fast forward 6 weeks. Court's back in session, and it looks like we're just gonna get round two of the same old arguments. But wait, this time, something's different. Someone comes up with a proposal that is so simple, but so brilliant, it's gonna cut through all of this nonsense. It's a wise old bee. He steps up in front of everyone, and he basically says, look, let's stop all this talking. Let's get to work. Let's have both the bees and the wasps build a honeycomb, right here, right now. See, this simple test isn't about words, it's about action. And this is so important. It shifts the whole thing from what you look like to what you can actually do. So what happens next? The wasps, they immediately start protesting, loudly. They're kicking up a fuss because they know the truth, right? They can't do the work. They can talk about the honey, but they can't make the comb. And just like that, a light bulb goes off for the judge. Their protest is the confession. He doesn't hesitate. He delivers the verdict, clear and simple. The honey belongs to the bees. Case closed. Okay, so what's the real lesson here? What's this old story actually trying to tell us? Let's break it down and really get to the heart of it. It really all comes down to the comb versus the claim. And that brings us to the big idea for today, what we're calling the work test. It's this idea that real ownership, real authority, it doesn't come from your title or what you say you are. It comes from what you can actually do. It's all about your ability to create the result. Simple as that. If you can't build the comb, you have no claim to the honey. And you can see the two sides so clearly here. You've got the bee. The bee is the real creator, right? Their skill is the ability to build something. And then you have the wasp. The wasp is just the claimant. Their only real skill is the ability to argue. One creates, the other just complains. So, of course, this is where we have to kind of turn the spotlight on ourselves, because let's be honest, relying on your stripes is super tempting. It's almost always easier to look the part than to actually do the work. So you got to ask yourself, in your own life, where does your authority come from? Is it from your yellow and black stripes, or is it from the actual honeycomb you produce? Okay, let's bring this home and make it super practical. How does this whole work test idea actually show up in your life right now? And trust me, once you start looking for it, you'll see it everywhere, in your personal life, at work, all over the place. Think about your personal life. Sometimes it's pretty subtle. Like, you know that person who takes credit for a huge family project they barely even helped with? They just showed up. That's a classic claim. It's based on just being there, not actually doing anything. But the real test comes with the next project, right? The one that requires real work. And that's when their WASP nature comes out, because they can't contribute. Or how about this one? The classic idea person in any group project. They've got all these amazing ideas, they talk a great game, that's the claim, but when it's time to actually sit down and do the writing or design the slides, poof, they're gone. Eventually, the world asks to see the finished product, the comb, and the person who just talks is left with absolutely nothing to show for it. And this whole thing just gets bigger in the professional world. You might have a competitor who copies your branding, your logo, basically your stripes. They're trying to look just like you. But what they can't easily copy is your quality, your actual work. The work test here is the customer. Sooner or later, customers figure out who can actually deliver the honey and who's just faking. So really, it all boils down to this. Your honey, the stuff you actually create, the results you get, that's your legacy. And believe me, sooner or later, life is going to hate you with a work test. So the smartest thing you can do, stop worrying so much about your stripes. Just focus on building your calm. All right, as we start to wrap this up, let's get a little reflective. I want you to take a really honest look at things. Your job, your relationships, your whole life. Is there any area where you're just kind of relying on your stripes to get by? And that leads to the final and maybe the most important question of all. If you were put to the test right now, today, and someone said, all right, show me what you can do, would you be ready to build, or would you start making excuses and protest? The reason this story has stuck around for so long is because it's just so true. Don't waste all your time and energy just arguing your case. Let your work speak for itself. Let that be your proof. So go forth and build your comb.